Hey folks, this is Kelani. While we know the next expansion is going to pit the Horde and the Alliance against each other once again in an all-out war for control of Azeroth, we don't really know why this all kicked off. There's two huge events which seem to start this war proper: the Alliance assaulting the Undercity to retake Lordaeron, and Teldrassil being burnt to the ground. There was some discussion about who struck first and trying to piece together the timeline of all of these battlefields, but we had confirmation from one of the devs that the burning of Teldrassil came first. That means the battle for Lordaeron is likely a retaliation move as opposed to an initial strike, so burning down Teldrassil might be what starts off this entire expansion, which begs the question: who is responsible for burning down a world tree? To start to answer that question, we should probably first ask, why would anyone want to burn down Teldrassil? It's been standing tall for quite a while now, and no one has really bothered to attack it recently, so there's only a few reasons I can think of why someone would want to destroy it. The first is to just straight up start a war. Hey Alliance, the Horde just burned down your super awesome tree, you should probably do something about that. What? Those gosh darn Horde, alright, let's go attack them. Whether the person who wants war is part of the Horde, part of the Alliance, or a third party to the whole thing, burning down one of the faction capitals is a great way to heat things up, if you'll pardon the pun. There are a handful of people in the world of Warcraft that would want to start a war between the Horde and Alliance, especially seeing as we're once again left to our own devices now that the Legion has been dealt with. The other reason I could see for someone wanting to destroy the World Tree is to prevent something bad from happening. Again, it could be the Alliance, the Horde, or a third party, but the World Trees haven't had a pure past. The World Trees were actually how the Old Gods managed to start corrupting the Emerald Dream. Their roots dug deep enough to come into contact with the vast expanse of an Old God, and the rest is history. Teldrassil itself was entirely corrupted by the Old Gods and the Emerald Nightmare before we did our thing. So if Teldrassil starts to show signs of corruption, someone might take it upon themselves to prevent history from repeating itself. The Old Gods will use any means necessary to sow chaos and distrust between any living thing, and if they're really wanting to show themselves again this expansion, then throwing the world into an all-out war is sure to make it easier for their agents to move around unhindered and unseen. A world divided is much easier to conquer. This could go as far as an agent of the Old Gods being responsible for burning down the tree. There is a third option. In the Blizzard press kit there are two images of Teldrassil, one titled Approach to Teldrassil, which is just before it starts burning from the looks of things, and the other is titled Teldrassil Burns, which sort of speaks for itself. In the first image we can see the grandeur of the World Tree. Notice the soft blue glow emanating from the heart of the tree. That might be caused by Azerite. If you're not aware, Azerite is a substance which we'll be fighting over for the majority of the next expansion. It's basically Azeroth's Titan blood, which is crystallizing and being absorbed by a multitude of creatures. Its presence is marked by that soft blue glow with some gold tones here and there. If the World Tree digs deep enough, it could be absorbing vast quantities of Azerite. It could be a gold mine of one of the most valuable resources that both factions are after. After the events of Antorus, Silithus will become a battleground, quite literally, where the factions fight over the sources of Azerite there. That battle is probably enough to get tensions between the two factions rising, so imagine if the World Tree is suddenly found to be this giant horde of Azerite. The factions will stop at nothing to ensure it's under their control. If things go badly and we end up fighting over Teldrassil, one faction could just say, enough is enough. If we can't have it, then neither can you. So there's a few reasons why someone would want to burn down Teldrassil, but who really has decent enough motive and would profit enough to go through with it? The Horde are the obvious first choice, right? It's Horde vs Alliance, and Teldrassil could be used to wage war on Kalimdor. Sure, that makes sense from a strategic point of view, but not as a first strike. This is supposed to happen before the Alliance attack on Undercity, so if the Horde did burn down Teldrassil, that's a pretty bad first move in a very long game of chess. In the upcoming novel, which details the events between the end of Legion and the start of Battle for Azeroth, we see that Sylvanas is very interested in Stormwind. A first strike on the Alliance strongholds, which actually means something to the power of the Alliance, would be way more impactful and also affect the strength of the Alliance on the same continent as the Undercity. Why would she send her armies and champions to burn down a tree on the other side of the planet? It just doesn't make a lot of sense for Sylvanas to make this move, especially especially before the war has begun to escalate. I can't think of any other members of the Horde who would gain anything significant from burning down Teldrassil or starting a war with the Alliance, but if we look back to the images I mentioned earlier, we can see that Sylvanas is there when it starts to burn down. She's accompanied by an orc, possibly Saurfang, and a human-looking ranger who is most likely Nathanos Blightcaller. So she's there, but I'm not sure she's the one who lit the matches, so to speak. There's also an injured elf. We can't really see what kind of elf, but she definitely seems gravely injured in this picture. If we move on to the picture where the tree has started to burn, we can see she's been made more comfortable and, more importantly, hasn't been finished off. So she must mean something, either to Sylvanas or to the Horde, or this venture wasn't an act of aggression. From what we can see, the blue hood and leather clothing mainly, people are speculating this figure is probably Varisa. I doubt Sylvanas would kill her sister, so it's a good fit from what we've seen so far. The other name people have been throwing around is Chandris Feathermoon, but I'm placing my money on Varisa. Just because Sylvanas is there doesn't mean she went there to light up the tree either. She could be heading there to help prevent what is about to transpire. There's obviously been some fighting going on, you can see scattered weapons all over in these images, but who was doing the fighting? If Sylvanas was tricked maybe coming here, maybe someone else was burning down the tree, she could be trying to prevent it. On the flip side of things, someone from the Alliance could have started all of this. Anyone who has a reason to go to war with the Horde is a prime suspect, which, let's be honest, is probably every race leader except for Anduin himself. Maybe Greymane figured it was about time something happened to really spark a fire under Anduin's butt to get him in line with every other Alliance leader. It might be a bit of a stretch, but people have done worse things to start a war they really wanted. If Greymane really wants to take the fight to the Undead and the Undercity, I'm sure he'll find a way to get things moving in the right direction. We've also seen the return of Jaina, and if you remember rightly, she wasn't exactly the happiest member of the Alliance when we saw her last, with the whole blowing up Theramore thing. She might just be unhinged enough to start a big fire upon the World Tree and blame everything on the Horde. She used to work with Thrall towards peace, but ever since Garrosh she's trying to wipe her hands of the Horde, and starting an all-out war is a pretty good first step in trying to wipe them from the face of the planet. If she has to burn down a World Tree to get what she wants, well, maybe that's what she'll do. I don't think either the Horde or the Alliance are responsible though, I just don't think either of the two factions gain enough for burning down Teldrassil. There's got to be an easier way to start a war on the Alliance side, and the Horde would probably just hit Stormwind first. So let's have a look at some outside parties who may benefit more. We mentioned the Old Gods already, and it's possible that they could be behind all of this madness. The Alliance and the Horde going back to fighting isn't the most unlikely thing to happen after we deal with the Legion, but Anduin specifically has always wanted peace between the two factions. Varian died believing that we would be working together as we look forward to the future of Azeroth without any imminent threats. A united Azeroth would be quite powerful indeed, so it's within reason that the Old Gods would want to stop that from happening. They could use any manner of trickery to get things to this point, corrupting and controlling key members of each faction, or just whispering doubts into the ears of anyone foolish enough to listen. It could all point towards the Old Gods creating a ripe environment for them to resurface and cause even more chaos. But what if the Old Gods are tied more closely to this new power of Azerite than we realize? What if the Titan's blood is already tainted with the power of the Old Gods? If we go back to the quotes from Il'gynoth, we have one which stands out. Her heart is a crater, and we have filled it. If the substance that we're all going crazy for is actually something like Saronite, already steeped in the corruption of the Old Gods, then anyone from either faction could be doing any number of crazy things. But burning down Teldrassil is quite specific, and if the Old Gods had used the trees as a conduit in the past, why would they destroy it themselves? What if the World Tree is absorbing Azerite and that's why it's becoming corrupted? Sylvanas or anyone else could be torching the tree because they understand that a World Tree soaked in Azerite is a World Tree that's already under the influence and control of the Old Gods. They're destroying Teldrassil because it's already too late, but I imagine we would have heard more about the Old Gods by now if that were the case. The other major third party that could benefit from the World Tree's destruction is someone we haven't seen in quite a while. If you've been paying attention to all of the little bits and pieces of news that have been unveiled over the last few days, you'll know about the Orgrimmar and Stormwind embassies. There's a new section and a new building in each of the factions' capitals called an embassy, where you can see all of the leaders of each faction stood around talking about the prospects of the new allied races. In the Alliance embassy, you could also find Rathian. We haven't seen Rathian since Warlords of Draenor, and even then it was only briefly. If you aren't aware of his deeds in the past, or you just happen to forget, Wrathion basically pitted the Horde and the Alliance against each other in the past. He believed that only a united Azeroth could stand against the horrors that await us in the future, an Azeroth specifically united under the banner of the Alliance. When his plans failed in Mists of Pandaria, he set Garrosh free and enlisted the aid of a rogue bronze dragon to work a whole bunch of crazy timey-wimey magic to create a new version of Draenor where the Iron Horde was established. The same Iron Horde that assaulted our world and ultimately failed. His interference caused many of the problems in Legion as well, as he opened up the doors for another Gul'dan to rise to power. So, I have to ask, what's his plan this time? He doesn't seem like the type of dragon to just sit back and let things play out. He wants to influence the current situation to end up at what he believes to be the best outcome. If he's back to his old plan of pit the Horde against the Alliance, so we only have one faction and one army protecting Azeroth, then it's not a stretch from there to say that he probably burned down Teldrassil to get things going. If Anduin is refusing to go to war and suddenly there's news of the Night Elf capital being burned to the ground, with Sylvanas standing beneath it as it burns, it becomes difficult for Anduin to hold his ground. The other leaders of the Alliance would definitely push for war, and boom, Wrathion gets what he wants. It would also probably be fairly easy for Wrathion to start burning down a world tree. He's a dragon. What are the Horde and the Alliance going to do? Set a few fires and hope it catches? A dragon could probably torch a good portion of the tree and get a big fire going. The question is why? What threat could we be facing which is worse than the Burning Legion, and why spark a world war if we should be working together towards a common goal? The only real threat left is the Old Gods and the Void Lords, and we know we'll face Azshara before all is said and done, but I wonder how far this expansion will go. If we end up midway through the expansion and suddenly the Old Gods pop up, are we just going back to holding hands until the external threats are dealt with again? It seems like Wrathion thinks the only way Azeroth can survive is if the Horde is no longer around, and who better to take them out than the Alliance? If he truly thinks the Alliance controlling the world is the only way forward, I don't see why he wouldn't torch a tree or two to get his plans rolling. The question is what happens when the Horde and Alliance are fighting each other, and something else comes to say hello, which is probably the Old Gods. Either way, we're going to be at war, and it seems like whoever burned down Teldrassil gets exactly what they wanted. So who do you think is responsible? Do you think this is part of a bigger picture? Leave all your thoughts and theories in the comments section below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.